Hi everybody, my name is Storm, and today we are going to learn how to throw out your book and learn tarot intuitively. I have been doing tarot most of my life, and it's been a practice that has been passed down from generation to generation. Even though that's the case, I want to open up my knowledge for everybody and show them a different, more unconventional way of learning tarot. First, I want to go into what tarot is. Tarot is a form of card-based divination that has been used for centuries. There have been claims that it originated in ancient Egypt, but the word tarot was not officially recorded until 14th and 15th centuries in Italy. One thing that I would like to add before we get started is that there are so many ways to learn tarot. So many different ways, and everybody learns differently. The way that I'm going to teach you in the class is the way that I personally found the easiest and helps cultivate your intuition the most. I'm not dissing these other ways of looking. I'm not dissing these long guidebooks that the authors have taken so much time to write and create. But I feel like when it comes to something intuitive, it's always good to have your own personal reference and your own personal connection to your cards, because it makes you enjoy it more, it makes the reading more personal, and I found that it makes the reading more accurate. The next thing I want to talk about is figuring out what type of deck is right for you. In a minute, we are going to cut to a demonstration of a couple different types of decks that you could use. This is all from my personal collection that I've accumulated over time. I've become a little bit of a deck hoarder, but I'm going to show you a couple of my favorites in the next couple clips. The first deck I want to talk about today is the traditional Rider-Waite deck. This deck is 78 cards and normally based on the traditional printing of the Rider-Waite deck. This one in particular is the Golden Universal Tarot, and if you can see, there's a little bit of a golden gleam. But the pictures are very similar to the ones that are widely recognized in today's world. For this class, this one and the following deck are going to be the ones I use for examples. The next type of deck I would like to talk about is a non-traditional Rider-Waite. Much like the original, it has 78 cards, major and minor arcana, and the major difference is that the artwork is extremely different. You still have similarities to the major arcana, but the artwork and the themes take liberties. For example, instead of wands, there's imps. And instead of swords, there's bats. So the meanings are similar, but sometimes artwork might resonate more with each different person. Now I want to briefly talk about oracle decks, because a lot of people just beginning like to use them. Oracle decks are not modeled after the Rider-Waite normally, and tend to be more free to the artist. A lot of times they will have different phrases on the bottom, which is great for when people want to start and they want some word to get their intuition going. This deck in particular is called the Queen of the Moon Tarot, and it's one of my favorite oracle decks because you can go by the word, the picture, the number on the card, and the phase of the moon that it correlates with. Other type of oracle decks, much like the Earth Warriors one that I'm holding right now, is themed around different people. There are plenty of oracle decks that will have gods and angels, and a lot of people will use these types of oracle decks to supplement a tarot reading and add clarity. The last type of tarot deck I want to talk about is the unconventional tarot decks. These are the type of decks that don't necessarily follow any type of tarot or oracle mold. They are unique to the own artist, and it is their personal form of divination. This deck is the Enigma deck by Daniel Martin Diaz, and it's actually modeled off of a Loteria board, which is a traditional Mexican game that turned into a fun way of divination. So this doesn't come with any guidebook. This comes with a bingo board, and much like its title, it's a bit of an enigma. You have to figure it out yourself. Another example of an unconventional tarot deck is the Dreams of Gaia deck. There are a little over 80 cards in this deck instead of the traditional 78, and there are cards like Knowledge that isn't normally seen in the regular tarot. There are also, instead of the 4 normal suits, it's divided into elements: air, water, fire, and earth. So it creates an absolutely stunning reading experience. To start out, the best way to learn how to use a tarot card is to do what I call a cold read, where you take your card. For example, this is the 5 of Swords. And without any knowledge of the deck, what the card is supposed to mean, make up your own scenario based on the card and connect it to how it's relating to you in your life. So, for example, the 5 of Swords right here. You can see there's a man and he's holding the sword. He has kind of a smug look on his face, and he is looking back at some people who are walking away. This could mean a multitude of different things. He could have challenged these men in a fight and took the swords. He could have stole the swords out of malicious intent. There are a world of possibilities. And this card could mean different things depending on the context of it and the scenario that is being read. Before we start to learn about different definitions and associations, I want to do a quick cold read exercise. Here we have the Halloween Tarot, one of my favorite decks to work with, and I am going to pick a card completely random. Here we have the 8 of Bats, and what I'm going to have you do is grab a pen and a journal and write down the story that you associate with this card without any prior knowledge. What's going on? Why is the girl there? What are the bats doing? What is the castle in the background? Try to be as detailed as possible, and feel free to pause the video right now if you would like. Now that you have everything written down, I'm going to explain the story that I created with this card. So, you have a girl, and I believe that she used to live up in like this town castle area, and she is far away from home, and she's lost, and she got herself tangled up into something, and she wasn't properly prepared. I see the bats more as helping her unravel instead of the ones tying her up. The bats are trying to help her get out of a sticky situation. The cat's down here is somewhat making an effort. And see that the moon in this deck usually has a face, but in this case, the moon doesn't have a face. So normally the guide's looking down. She feels lost and trapped and alone, even though she has moved far away. And this can be drawn when somebody is feeling lost and trapped, and they are looking for a support system to go to in their time of need. Now, my story might be a lot different than your story. It might be similar. I would like to hear what your stories are, if you want to put it in the Facebook group, just to see how everybody's cold read actually differs. This type of imagination doesn't come easily to everyone, and so the way that I teach this course is that it's a hybrid of doing cold reads and references. The references that I have, you actually will have a worksheet that has some keywords connected to the different cards, the numerology, the elements, which we will go all into this class. Each one, it's not necessarily a novel written on these different things. This is more of like, you're going to do a cold read, but if you're stumped, there's a little something you can look at. Alright, now we get into the fun part. This next portion of the class is going to be about learning what the cards mean in a way that is based on general association. So I'm not going to go into a deep dive in every single card, but I'll be giving you puzzle pieces that you need in order to create your own picture and your own story. The tarot is divided into two different types of cards, the major and the minor arcana. We're going to talk about the majors first. They are devised into 22 different cards ranging from 0 to 21, and they usually come up when there's some sort of karmic issue or just big life events that are happening. A lot of times I'll do readings for people and decks will come up where there's like, I don't know, most of the cards tend to be majors, and I look at the person I'm reading and I'm like, are you okay? Because the majors usually denote something big happening. Sometimes a reading doesn't have any majors, and that's okay. Sometimes a reading has one or two and the entire spread is circling around it. It all depends on what's going on and the context around it, but until then, we're going to go into a little bit of background on the major arcana cards and how they can affect your reading. We are going to start off with the Fool. The Fool walks towards the edge of a cliff. He's not quite aware of where he's going, but he doesn't seem to care. You could look at this in different ways, whereas he is going into the unknown, or he is actually a fool and about to fall off the cliff. The dog is trying to stop him, but he is not paying attention and is stuck in his own ways. The Magician to me is a card of untapped potential. There's something about the Magician that shows self-worth, self-power. He is so sure that he is able to do his magic. And the Magician is something that a lot of people look up to as something that they would wish they were. The High Priestess is a symbol of infinite wisdom. She is a symbol of information withheld and information given. I personally see this card come up when information is being kept from somebody because of how the High Priestess is holding the papers close to her and she is not budging. I like to refer to the Empress as a creative powerhouse. We'll go into the numerology in a little bit, but the number 3 is the number of creativity and growth, and it has a very childlike energy to it. The Empress is not as put together as the High Priestess. She is out in the woods, she is living her life, and she is all about creativity and is considered to be a master creator in the tarot. The Emperor. Thing is, you look at him, and the first thing that you notice is he is not going to move. The Emperor is stubborn. He is powerful, but he is set in his ways, and sometimes this will come up when trying to change somebody's opinion on something. If they're stubborn, the Emperor shows up and tells you that this person is going to be very difficult to sway. The Hierophant is the ultimate spiritual teacher. He is all about learning and growing and changing, and a lot of times in decks there will be keys somewhere on the Hierophant's card. This is a symbolism of finding the key to unlock your knowledge. The Hierophant is always happy to give that knowledge, and a lot of times I have drawn those cards for people who I have mentored, and I was able to act as a Hierophant in their spiritual growth. The next card is the Lovers. This is one of the more well-known cards of the tarot, and a lot of times people think it's for romantic love exclusively, and that's not always the case. A lot of times the Lovers will talk about just pure unconditional love in a situation or the desire for it. It could be romantic, it could be like family or sibling, or like love between best friends, but it doesn't necessarily mean romantic love. On to the Chariot. I always say you can't stop it. You really can't stop the Chariot. The Chariot is something that comes that is inevitable, that is far past being able to prevent, and a lot of times it's a catalyst for change, for spiritual growth or emotional growth. The Chariot is usually seen as an omen for something bad to happen, but most of the time the context around the card says that the Chariot is something that will start a chain reaction. The next card is one of my favorites. It is Strength. See, there is a woman. She is opening up the lion's mouth. The thing about Strength that people tend to overlook is that she is being gentle yet strong. There is a bit of gentleness with her, how she's opening up the lion's mouth without hurting it. And a lot of times strength can come in ways that are unexpected. The Hermit is a card about self-isolation, soul-searching, and trying to figure out the direction they want to go. Sometimes it's good to have some time alone before you make a big journey in your life, because you want to make sure that you are going the right direction. The Hermit is about solitude, but being okay with the feeling of being alone. The Wheel of Fortune is known as a bringer of luck and the bringer of the unexpected. A lot of times when this comes up in a spread, when somebody is searching for an answer and they don't know how to proceed, the Wheel of Fortune says that the outcome is going to be unexpected and might be driven by chance. Justice. Justice is a card of karma returned. There could be a situation. The Hanged Man is about feeling stuck in a situation. Maybe some things are out of your control and you're itching to make a change. The Hanged Man usually comes up when somebody is in a type of limbo state where you don't know how to proceed because you can't control anything. The best way to combat the Hanged Man is to wait things out and realize that some things will never truly be in your control. And once you find peace with that, you will find the same amount of peace that the Hanged Man does on the card. Death. If I had $1 for every time somebody asked me if they were going to die when I drew this card, I'd have a lot of money. The Death card is not scary. It may appear scary because death is, but it's not actually talking about you dying. It's more about change. Sudden, unexpected change. And, okay, it may be a little bit scary because most people do fear change, but a lot of times the Death card symbolizes the end of something that needs to be over, and in order for you to begin a new chapter of your life. So when the Death card comes, you can be sure that good things will come after. The next card is Temperance. Temperance is one of the most self-explanatory cards of the deck because it's about being, well, temperate and patient. A lot of times this card will also come up when guides are trying to reach you with messages, and it's a reminder to be open to different possibilities. The Devil is also another scary card of the deck. People are afraid when it comes up. A lot of times it just represents feeling trapped in a situation and that there are forces in a situation that are out of your control. You see there's people chained down and they're trapped and they can't get out. A lot of times people will be stuck in a situation and feel trapped in their life, and that's what this card represents most of the time. We move on to the Tower. The Tower. Probably my favorite card in the deck. Not because of how it scares people, much like the Death and Devil cards, but because it is a constant symbol of knocking something down just to build something better. I feel like a lot of us can relate in our lives where we destroy everything that we have in order to build a more solid foundation. You don't want to be doing that over and over and over again, but if you do it a couple times throughout your life, it usually helps you become happier and more successful. The star. What else can you say about the star other than that it is beautiful and radiant and overflowing with achieved goals? The thing about the star is that it is the end goal for most people. They want to feel comfortable with themselves and their life, and they want to have an abundance. The star is something that represents all of that. The moon. The thing about the moon card is at first glance, it seems pretty positive. Like, it's nighttime, the moon is shining down, and a lot of times this is a card for introspection, staying up late, trying to plan out your life, and really shadow work. The moon is a way to shed light onto the darkness, and it's very subtle, but how deep the moon card goes is entirely up to the situation. The sun. The sun is a card of overwhelming, everlasting joy. The joy that this card brings, the good fortune that it predicts, and the inner and outer peace that it has. The sun card is like the most positive card of the entire deck. Undoubtedly. There is nothing negative in this card whatsoever, and the thing about the tarot is that a lot of tarot has a mix of dark and light, but the sun is just pure, unbridled light. Judgment. This one seems to get confused with justice a lot, whereas justice is more about karma and divine retribution. This judgment card is about stopping the status quo, being true to yourself and being true to how you feel instead of going by society's standards. There's a lot of individuality in this card, and it's really about breaking free and just having a really good sense of self. The last card in the major arcana is the World. Now, whenever I'm reading somebody and I pick this card, I ask them if they have any travel plans. If they don't, I tell them that either it's coming or they need to plan a vacation ASAP. The World is about expanding into new horizons, where you get the thing about the human brain is that it likes to go into cycles and repetition and routine. Sometimes the World card is a call to action where you need to break out of that cycle, travel somewhere, go somewhere that you're not normally, do something that you're not normally doing. And once you break out of that routine, it opens up your mind and it opens up your insight just a little bit more. So when you get the World card, just do something different. Next, let's talk about the 4 suits of the tarot and their elemental associations. There are 4 elements: air, fire, water, and earth, and they all have a different energy associated with them. This is connected to the cards in a certain way that adds another layer. It will help determine the energies of the cards. The first suit I'd like to talk about is the suit of wands. Now, wands are connected to air, and air is an element that is all around us. It is good for movement, speed, change, manifestation. Air is something where in the weather, the more movement of air creates tornadoes and hurricanes and things that cannot be ignored. When it comes down to it, the suit of wands is connected to air because it is a call to action. It represents things in life that may be going so fast. It could be overwhelming, and it represents change that is happening. The suit of pentacles is represented by earth. Earth is the element that is associated with grounding and stability. And in the tarot, it takes the form of pentacles, which is another term for money, gold, riches. So a lot in the suit of pentacles has to do with either remembering where you are, grounding yourself, or your work ethic, your material possessions, and just the things that are in your life that are tangible. Now, you may be thinking, the suit of cups, water goes into a cup, water is connected with cups. That's the case, but it goes a little deeper than that. The thing about water is that it often represents emotion, spiritual growth, knowledge, and think of it as the internal growth, whereas the pentacles are an external growth. Water tends to be about love, just anything that you're feeling inside, and the pursuit of knowledge. A lot of times I draw a lot of cup cards for college students because they're in a period of their life where they're growing and learning and trying to figure out where they're going in life. Last but not least, I'd like to talk about the suit of swords. Swords are associated with fire. I don't have a prop for this one, but swords are associated with inspiration and a death and rebirth cycle. The thing about fire and the suit of swords, a lot of people seem to be afraid of it because the cards are a lot heavier than the ones in the rest of the deck. Personally, you have to look at the suit of swords in a different light, because with every bit of darkness, there is light to counteract it. Fire itself is a light. And the thing about the suit of swords is the death and rebirth cycle that it implies. Whereas a forest fire burns down a forest, but it makes room for new growth that is healthy to the ecosystem. If you apply that to your life, the suit of swords and the fire associated with it becomes a little less frightening. Something that I found that was overlooked when people learn tarot is that they're not learning the numerology associated with it. Now, I learned with numerology because my mom reads a deck of playing cards based on the numbers and the symbols, and it's a really interesting thing to see because the numbers themselves, if you just read those on the deck, they tend to be spot on with the images of the cards and the energy associated with it. Just much how the elements add a layer to the suits, the cards, the numbers in the cards also add another layer to everything. Aces line up with the number 1. In numerology, the number 1 defines individuality, new opportunities, and potential. It can also represent a gift that's being given, and in the case of this, it could be knowledge, material possessions, a task, or something spiritual from a guide. 2 is often the number of duality and a choice. Whenever there's a 2 in somebody's chart, it usually has to do with the inability to have a decision or having multiple viewpoints on something. And there's also the implication of balance in the number 2. In this case, if you look at the tarot, there's a balance in relationships and a balance in worldly possessions. And then there's also choices that need to be made. The number 3 has a childlike energy about it. It's very playful, whimsical, and is always seen as a number of creativity. So if you're looking at this, you have creativity, wondering what's out there, playfulness, the perfect group of people, and the 3 of Swords is a little bit different because it represents that creativity and that playfulness being stabbed on and being destroyed. The number 4 is about structure and stability, as the 4 of Wands may show. It can also mean praying for or longing for that structure and stability. Same with the Four of Swords. The other thing about fours is that people don't like being in a state of four because they're building that foundation, but a lot of times they're not satisfied with what they have. They want more. They want that structure, stability, but they want to go above and beyond and not just survive. 2020 is a 4-year in numerology, and sometimes it feels like we are just trying to get through and trying to survive. We want more, and in the coming years, we are definitely going to get that. 5 is a number of change. It's a number of struggle, of give and take, and uncertainty. The thing about 5 is change is the biggest word that I can associate with it, but it also has a lot to do with chaos, because with big change comes big chaos and not being certain to the future. 5 is in the middle of the 1 through 10 numbers, and it is in the middle of everything. You've already started, but you don't know where it's going to end. 6 is seen as the number of love. And if you noticed earlier, the Lover's card is actually the number 6. 6 is about a give and take relationship and your relationships with others. There's a lot of people in this world who enjoy taking more than they give. Sometimes things can come up like that. It can also represent unity and being in solidarity with others. 6s also have a very family-based connection and will often come up when talking about self-love and soul connections. There's also a little bit of uncertainty with the 6 of Swords. If you haven't noticed so far, sometimes the swords can be a bit different than the others. It tends to show a little more darkness than the other 3 suits. In this case, the 6 of Swords is about supporting each other despite not knowing the future. In numerology, a 7 is about overcoming conflict, going on a spiritual journey, seeing your goals. Not just seeing your goals, but actually taking action and achieving what you would like. Sometimes it requires force, sometimes it requires patience. And remembering, here are the swords once again, not to carry too much responsibility on yourself. If you have a heavy load and you have a journey ahead of you, make sure that it's not too much for you to bear. One of my favorite types of number energies is 8. 8 is the go-getter number. It is work ethic, great work ethic, swiftness, and leaving things behind that you do not serve. Also, the swords, once again, act as a reminder to not tie yourself down in one situation. Don't put all your eggs in one basket because you will be left behind. The thing about 8s is that you have to learn to go quick, move forward, or you will be left behind in the world. The cool thing about the 9s is that there's always something behind the person. In this case, she is tending to her garden, waiting for her goals to come to fruition. He doesn't realize, the 9 of Cups, he doesn't realize that he has all of these great treasures coming to him. The 9 of Swords is somebody anxious about things to come. And the 9 of Wands, he is trying to decide what wand to pick for his final battle. He's trying to determine what is best for the things ahead. These all represent a goal or a situation that is about to come to a close and the final steps of uncertainty before the conclusion. And we have the last of our number cards, the 10s, the completion of the cycle, the abundance, the conclusion, And the cups and the pentacles tend to talk about maybe a graduation of knowledge, or finally being able to settle down and have financial security. This is really interesting because the wands and the swords say something a little different. The wands can talk about the beginning of a new chapter, taking everything that you carried with you and continuing on into a new part of your life. The Ten of Swords talks about the end. This is also another card that tends to scare people because they think they're going to die. The actual case is that with the Ten of Swords, it denotes completion, the ending of a certain chapter in your life. And a lot of the time, it's really good to add some closure to that section. The next thing I want to talk about is the court cards. The court cards are the pages, the knights, the queens, and the kings. They're not typical to the major arcana, and they're technically part of the minor arcana, but they're not numbered in the way that the minors normally are. These normally represent people or a type of energy that is present in a situation. Here we have the pages. The pages usually represent someone who's younger, more optimistic, and usually denote a type of message where you have each of them, they are holding something. They are trying to deliver that message to you. The knights in history were known to be a couple ranks above pages, and they were the soldiers that would protect a kingdom. So much like the pages, the knights often bring a message, but they don't just bring a message, they bring a call to action. Whereas the Page of Cups would say that it is delivering knowledge to you, but a Knight of Cups would represent that you need to learn more and that you need to gain more knowledge for yourself. The queens are very powerful women. They are nourishing, mother-like, but at the same time they have a strength about them. They have the gentleness and strength that the Strength card actually shows, where you don't have to be rough in order to be strong. The queens also represent creativity and innovation, much like the way the Empress does. Last, we have the kings. The kings are a symbol of leadership and wisdom, and they are a little more intimidating than the queens are. They are here to get things done, and they will not take no for an answer. Before we start talking about journaling and how you can incorporate tarot into your self-care routine, I want to talk a little bit more about how context can change a card. This is for when you're reading multiple cards at once, you might be mixing different decks together, or you're trying to use a clarifier. I'm going to show you an example or two on how that can change things and how fluid reading tarot actually is. Let's talk a little bit about context. In the middle here we have the Six of Imps. In this case, the story that I created for it is that there are a bunch of imps hanging out. They are all friends, they're taking a journey together, and they are just enjoying life. Alone, this card symbolizes friendship, a larger group, and just a harmonious relationship in a group. But if you add another card to it, such as the Nine of Bats, now you see that there is a little bit of anxiety going on. Maybe they're worried about their friends not liking them, or just issues that might arise with friends in general. I know, as somebody who's dealt with anxiety, sometimes I feel like I'm just getting on my friends' nerves, when in reality that's not the case. which leads to another card. Usually in this situation, you would draw another card to add clarity to the situation and add a solution. In this case, you have the Queen of Pumpkins. And if we take a closer look at her, she is sitting there peacefully. The entire energy of the card has a very peaceful aura to it. There's plants, there's animals all around her. She is surrounded by love, and the anxiety that you see is nothing to be anxious about. It's just inside of, in this case, if I were to draw these cards for somebody, I would say you're anxious about your relationships, but you have nothing to be anxious about. The people around you do love and care about you. Now that I showed you an example of how context can affect a deck, I'm going to do an activity with you that's pretty similar. We're going to start with the first card. Make sure you have your journals handy. And pause the video and write your story about this card, the Hanged Man. You can use the cheat sheet that I gave you and any other information, but what does this card mean to you by itself in this context? Feel free to pause now. Now that you have that written down, what I'll do is draw the next card. Do the same thing, but look at this card and using your imagination, notice how this card affects this one. You can take your time, pause the video as long as you need. Doing this off the bat is a little difficult, so don't beat yourself up if you can't get it right away. Now we're going to draw one more card, just like we did in the example. And you see the final card right here, the Three of Pumpkins. That is Three of Pentacles. And now that you're looking at this card in the context of the other two, think of this one as a solution. Feel free to pause the video again, journal down what you think, and see how the meaning changes and what your final conclusion is with the deck. Now that you have everything together, I'm also going to make a post about this on the Facebook page so everyone can share the stories and the reading that they got from these cards. The one that I personally got is that the Hanged Man is about kind of waiting in limbo, stuck with things without your control. The Ace of Imps is here. You can see the hand is holding him back from flying. So the situation that I'm seeing with these two cards in particular is that there's a situation going on and you feel like you're stuck and you feel like you're being trapped or held back when all you want to do is reach for the stars. And then you have the final card, the Three of Pumpkins. And what I'm seeing is that even though things might seem like you're trapped now, work on things that you can control and work on things that you are doing in order to make it easier for you when you're finally able to reach for the stars and achieve your goals. I like to see on the Facebook group what you guys came up with. So they may all be a little different, but that was my interpretation of the reading based on the context. One question I always get asked is, what about reversed cards? Do you read cards reversed, or does it not matter? My answer to that is normally no, but it depends on the deck. I've seen decks that actually have different drawings when you turn them upside down versus right side up. But personally, and from experience with a lot of other people who do read cards for a living, they don't do the reversed. Normally, if you're going to read a reversed card, it means either the opposite of what the card is supposed to mean, or it's a less severe version of that card. Personally, the reason I don't read reversed cards is because if I'm looking at a card upside down, how am I supposed to see the details on the picture? It may seem like a silly reason to do so, but when you're really trying to look at the story and look at the picture, I find it a little more difficult to read the reverse cards. But if you do read reverse cards, that's totally fine. You just would have to kind of go through the deck a second time in your journaling and do it all for the reversed cards as well. The last part of this class is learning how to use tarot in your everyday self-care routine. I have created a worksheet that will be available with this class. You can print them out and use them as a template for your daily journaling, or you can use an old notebook. The best way to do this is just, with no prior knowledge of your deck, to pick a card every day and slowly work your way through the entire deck. In 78 days, you will have an entire guidebook that you yourself have written, and that is the goal with this class. It's 78 days of self-discovery, and by the end of it, I'm sure you'll probably move on to another deck that you love. Alright, so I'm going to walk through with you how I would fill in this journal entry. I'm going to shuffle my cards and pick a card that represents what is going on in my life right now. I'm using the Halloween Tarot because this is the one that I'm working through at the moment. So I picked out the Eight of Ghosts, and if you can see by the picture, there is a man walking away and all of the ghosts are sitting there, they're watching, they're a little sad. The moon is looking down, looking at the entire situation, and that's actually pretty similar to the one in the original Rider-Waite deck. So when writing it down, I put down the date. The name of the deck is the Halloween Tarot. The card pulled is the Eight of Ghosts. And then if you look at your cheat sheet with associated symbolisms with the elements and numbers, it has an 8. The Eight of Ghosts is the same as the Eight of Cups in the original, and that has an association with water. And so you just like that, this is where the cheat sheet will come in handy if you don't have all these things memorized. The associations are an important part if you're just starting out. Then you're asked what the story is behind the card. So put this back up on the screen again. So from what I'm seeing is that this guy is walking away from all of his friends. He's going on a journey, and everybody's like, are you sure about this? Are you sure you're gonna leave? And he's not saying a word and just walking away. This is the story behind the card that I created without any guidebook. The guidebook for this deck actually says that you don't really need it, so I always find that really interesting. So once you write the story behind the card, the next question is, how does the card fit into your life? And how will you apply today's message to your self-care and wellness practices? Now, I can't give you an answer for this one because it's going to vary per person, but in my case, like, I'm in the process of going on a big move, a big transition in my life, so the relationships that I've had with certain people have been faltering. People have kind of like left me ghosted. As I walk away on this journey, I know what I'm doing is the right choice, but I'm not listening to the other people around that are trying to keep me here. And being sure of myself and being confident in myself is something that I can apply to my wellness practice. So doing something like that is going to help you and really connects your soul to each one of the cards in your deck. And once you have that deep connection with each individual card, it becomes so much easier to read. Like, I cannot explain that enough. Once that 78 days are over, your entire deck has a journal entry for each card. Like, you're basically a pro at that point, at least with the particular deck that you're working with. One last thing before I let you go. I created a cheat sheet for you. This has charts with keywords, associations, numerology, and a bunch of other stuff that will help you if you're trying to intuitively read and you are lost. I have a couple tips here that I want to close off with, a few things to remember when you're doing your journaling. First things first, all decks vary. This sheet is based off of the original Rider-Waite Tarot. That's because this is a deck that most beginners use because of its heavy symbolism. If your intuition is telling you something different than the cheat sheet, go with your gut. The cheat sheet isn't a definitive definition of what this card means in this given situation. We talked a little bit about that and how context is everything. The cards can change their meanings depending on the situation and the surrounding cards. But the cheat sheet does seem to help get you in the right direction. Also, some decks are kinder than others. A Rider-Waite deck tends to give more tough love than your typical Oracle deck. I have had decks really go at me, like just be completely ruthless in their messages, but then I've had other decks that they don't sugarcoat things, but they go about things a little nicely. It all depends on your style of reading and how much criticism you can take from a deck of cards. Also, the most important tip that I have for you is if it feels right and the answer you have feels right, 9 times out of 10 it is. I have never said that enough. There has been major improvement in my personal readings and the personal readings of my students when they let all doubt go and stop second guessing themselves. So with that, I want to say that thank you for attending this class, and I will see you later.